Chapter 35 God and the Weather. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 10 to 17. For the land whither thou goest in to possess it is not as the land of Egypt, from whence ye came out, where thou sowest thy seed and waterest it with thy foot as a garden of herbs. But the land whither ye go to possess it is a land of hills and valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven, a land which the Lord thy God careth for. The eyes of the Lord thy God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year, even unto the end of the year. And it shall come to pass, if ye shall hearken diligently unto my commandments which I command you this day, to love the Lord your God, and to serve him with all your heart, and with all your soul, that I will give you the rain of your land in its due season, the first rain, and the latter rain, that thou mayest gather in thy corn, and thy wine, and thine oil. And I will send grass in thy fields for thy cattle, that thou mayest eat and be full. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived, and ye turn aside, and serve other gods, and worship them. And then the Lord's wrath be kindled against you, and he shut up the heaven that there be no rain, and that the land yield not her fruit, unless ye perish quickly from off the good land which the Lord giveth you. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 10 to 17. This text is a step in understanding both the offense of Deuteronomy and its insistence on God's providence. Moses here declares that the weather is under God's personal providence. The worldview of humanism is very much at odds with this. For the humanist, there is a quote-unquote scientific reason for everything, and by quote scientific end quote is meant an impersonal cause or causes producing random effects. In my university days, I was taught in a course on psychology that consciousness was merely an epiphenomenon, a side effect on the activities of the brain muscles and having no real meaning. Consciousness was thus, by definition, reduced to something meaningless and impersonal. Scientism uses the same strategy to depersonalize all of life and, in fact, will not deal head-on with the fact of life. Our text militates against all of this. It tells us plainly that our weather is an aspect of God's government and providence. The psychology course I took at Berkeley dealt with human action in non-human terms as stimulus and response. It accounted for everything without mentioning meaning, purpose, or consciousness, let alone God and his purposes. Such scientism is as far afield as can be. It is deliberately blind to meaning. Our text has a contrast between two kinds of weather. First, the weather and farming of Egypt is cited. In Egypt, the Nile was dependent on weather far upstream from Egyptian territories. Rains and streams remote from the farm areas determined survival. In the time of high waters, the farmer had no problems. The irrigation water was directed into the fields. Wooden checks blocked and directed the waters into the desired fields. The farmer, with his foot, could knock aside a check or place it where he needed, in order to best utilize the water. The remoteness of the headwaters of the Nile made him less aware of his dependence on the rains that fell. But, second, Canaan is a land of hills and valleys. Irrigation can still be utilized, but the dependence on rainfall is an obvious one. The Israelites would have to look to the sky for rain, and they would therefore be more obviously aware of their need to depend on God. This fact should prompt them to faith and obedience. Of course, as Moses later predicts, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 15 following, the Hebrews did not look to God, but rather to themselves. Men prefer to have things under their control than in God's hands. This was the appeal of the fertility cults. Their premise was that human action can be made efficacious in all and every area of life, so that the basic issues are in men's hands. According to George Adam Smith, whose perspective was not orthodox. In fact, the Egyptian peasant could scarcely understand a living personal relationship between the individual and the deity. Thus, the Egyptian grew up under conditions unfavorable to the development of his spiritual life, but such as would fortify his understanding and practical industry. If Smith were right, then it should have followed that sciences developed greatly in Egypt, but this is not true. They were no more remarkable there than were other peoples of antiquity. He is right, however, in stressing the impersonal nature of the relationship of the people of Egypt with their gods. God promises rain in its season. The early rains in October and the latter rains in March and April. Verse 14. The result will be grass in the fields for their livestock and rain for their crops. In the earlier years of the 20th century, the annual rainfall in Jerusalem was about 25 inches, about the same as in London, England. In making his promise, God requires a threefold obligation of obedience in this chapter. Each obligation begins with the words, "Therefore shall ye," or "Therefore thou shalt." These three obligations are given in verse 1, in verses 8 to 9, and in verses 18 to 21. The first is to love God and obey Him, verse 1, and the two are identical. We cannot love God and disobey Him. The second, verses 8 and 9, is more specific in commanding obedience. It is their source of strength. The third, in verses 18 to 21, requires that our children be taught obedience. Honeycutt called it the threefold obligation of obedience. It is this obedience that men want rid of. It is, for them, better to suffer from impersonal but potentially controllable natural elements than to be dependent upon God. Herodotus, in his visit to Egypt, encountered a comparable attitude among the Egyptian priests. He was told, "For, having heard that all the lands of Greece were watered by rain and not by rivers, as their own was, they said, that the Grecians at some time or other would be disappointed in their great expectations and suffer miserably from famine, meaning that if the deity should not vouchsafe rain in them, but visit them with a long drought, the Greeks must perish by famine, since they had no other resource for water except from Jupiter only." The issue is thus not a new one. From antiquity, men have seen it as God versus man, and they have chosen man, as did Israel. Men do not want a Garden of Eden from God unless they can control it and remake it. This is why, in verses 16 and 17, Moses warns the Hebrews against paganism. All forms of paganism are variations of humanism. In one form or another, they stress man's essential autonomy. J. A. Thompson rightly stressed the fact of God's total and sovereign control in all spheres. These verses give expression to the belief, which is found in many areas of the Old Testament, that there was a close connection between loyalty and obedience to Yahweh and material blessing. Compare Amos chapter 4, verses 6 to 10. God was sovereign over both nature and history, and could make the weather and other natural phenomena serve historical ends. Genesis chapters 6 to 9, 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1, Joel 2, verse 11, Amos chapter 4, 7, Haggai chapter 2, verse 17. Compare 1 Corinthians 11, verses 29 following, James chapter 5, 17 following. The belief in man's power as basic is the primary ingredient in self-righteousness or Pharisaism. God stacked things against such an attitude in giving Canaan instead of Egypt to the Hebrews, so that he thereby left them without a shred of an excuse in their subsequent apostasy into Pharisaism. Of course, in any part of the earth, the weather should teach men humility, but it doesn't. Matthew chapter 5 verse 45 is sometimes cited against our text. Our Lord declares, "For he, God, maketh his sun to rise upon the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust." This has nothing to do with times of judgment. In the normal course of affairs, the weather affects all equally. In the normal course of human dealings, we are to be just to all alike. This does not mean that we do not prosecute criminals, but that in our normal dealings, we deal justly with all men. Our Lord does not say that God never judges men through the weather. His reference to Noah in Matthew chapter 24 verses 37 and 38 makes that very clear. This text tells us how far we have come from a biblical view of history. God's determination of the weather and of history are not often asserted, and God's contact with man is too often limited to a vague influence on the soul. This is emphatically not biblical religion.